Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tasha Mousseau. I am Wichita, Kiowa, and Caddo from Oklahoma, also from Lakota, and I am reaching you today from the traditional homelands of the Lakota people at my home in Porcupine, South Dakota. I just want to say welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this very important conversation during Pride Month. But as we know, we want to uplift our relatives year-round and appreciate our differences and promote inclusivity and all of those wonderful values that we have in our tribal communities. Just a little background, this session really came up out of some training and technical assistance that I was a part of with one of our grantees who really wanted to better support our young people and wanted to know, from their perspective, what are the ways in which we can do that. So as we go into today's session, knowing that these young people are not representative of all tribal youth, but really thank them for giving us a glimpse into their worldview. Next slide, please. So this is just the overall vision and purpose of the Tribal Youth Resource Center. I know most of you are familiar with it, but as we do sessions like this, we are really working toward the vision of a future where Indigenous youth thrive through our traditional lifeways. And part of that is that acceptance and understanding and being good relatives. So hopefully this enhances and works toward the vision of the TYRC. Next slide. And of course, TYRC is under the umbrella of the Tribal Law and Policy Institute. Next slide. So for our opening today, we have Isabella Friday, a youth leader who is going to give us a wokesape or words of encouragement to start us off in a good way. Isabella, if you'd come on and we will give you a moment to introduce yourself and share your words with us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Isabella Friday. I'm Wichita, Kiowa Gado, and I'm Gagla Lakota. I'm also a TYRC young leader. And I just want to say welcome everyone to the webinar and thank you for joining. It's a big thing, we're here supporting our Native youth. And Indigenous people have always had a very welcoming and open community. So we've been very accepting of I would say different things in a lot of ways. And especially today, there's a lot of positive and negative things that surround LGBTQ. So I think it's important today that we come to this webinar with an open mind and an open heart to understand what our Native youth are going through today. It could be good and it could be bad. And it also gives us a chance to learn more about how we can support them. For me personally, I have family members who identify as LGBTQ. So it's a big learning curve just because not everyone is used to it. So I've learned a lot throughout these years, and I'm very thankful to have them in my life. It doesn't change them in any way. They're still my family members at the end of the day. So again, thank you all for joining, and I hope you guys can take something away from this webinar. And thank you again for supporting our youth.
Thank you, Isabella. As she mentioned, our tribal communities have always been inclusive. And one thing that I see with this generation of young people that we have represented here today is that they are, very open, accepting, inquisitive, all of the good attributes that we have as human beings to really give people the freedom to be their authentic selves wherever they are. And I admire that in this generation. I think they're bringing us full circle back to where our people were, where we were all human beings and we were all relatives. And all of our differences were our strengths. And it created the diversity in our communities. So Thank you, Isabella. I appreciate you. Next slide. So now we'll bring on our youth panelists, going to give them a moment to introduce themselves. And we will start with you, Kennedy. You're on mute.
I figured. Shitsok nati girigiri sasari umpawaya hipi the ditsiri wiku girigiri oigu garuto dete. Hello, how are you all? My name is Kennedy Friday. I'm Wichita from the Waco band, Kaiwa, Caddo, and Hunka Lakota. I recently graduated from Red Cloud High School, and I'm 17 years old.
Thank you, Kennedy. Misty?
Gata shikeshe Misty Sandoval Inishia, Posoni Nishlan, Porigini Bashkin, Ilagana Lashe, Hashkashi National Output Egglade, Two Spirit Michelin. Hi everyone, my name is Misty Sandoval. I'm born for the Big Water clan and I'm of the Bitterwater clan. And so I am Dene and I am Seminole. I'm 22 years old and yeah, I do identify as Two Spirit. So I really appreciate TRC bringing me onto the panel today.
Thank you, Tojan, Misty. And I just want to give you a little shout out too. I heard you may have graduated from college recently. I think we still have you listed as a college student, but congratulations to you and Kennedy on your accomplishments. Next slide. And so I am going to ask Toshka Heath Red Owl to introduce himself. But before I do, I did want to let everyone know, unfortunately, Tojan Devon is not able to join us today, but she is with us in spirit and would love to have her on a future panel. She has an amazing insight and maturity and understanding of the world that I just love to hear. So Toshka Heath.
Hi, good morning. My name is Heath Red Owl. I am now a senior in high school. I identify as Two Spirit, and I am from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. But I do live in the Oglala Lakota Pioneers Reservation. Yeah.
Welcome, Heath, and congratulations as you get to the top of that hill before you graduate. And Heath is fabulous. I love to watch him cheer. He's an amazing cheerleader here in our community and just a really good human. So thank you again for joining us and sharing your perspective, Toshka. Next slide. The learning objectives for today are pretty broad. Really want this to be conversational. We will welcome questions and comments in the chat throughout, and then there will be formal question and answer at the end. But basically, we just want to increase the understanding of the youth perspective on gender identity, expression, and sexual identity. We want to understand the current challenges faced by our LGBTQIA2S+ youth, all of the letters. And we want to brainstorm together alongside the youth about supportive practices and programming for them that is going to speak to their hearts and spirits. So very broad, but gives us a lot of leeway to really open our hearts and our minds and think about the intentionality with which we are serving the needs of our LGBTQ youth. Next slide. So again, just want to preface everything that we are about to have this conversation and speak about in that these youth do not represent all youth of their generation. They represent themselves and their own individual perspectives. That being said, we can also not capture all of the histories and understandings and modern contexts of all the tribes in the United States. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes. So just want to make sure that we're giving that caveat that we're not speaking for everyone or their histories, but did want to ground us a little bit in the traditional concepts that we understand for our tribal communities. And some of those are overarching across tribal affiliation. You know, we've talked about the inclusivity and acceptance, but in many tribal cultures, of course, our LGBTQ relatives played very important roles, whether that was as medicine people or giving names, their traditional names, being master artisans, being foster parents, if that's what we would call them, in that time so that we didn't have orphans. And so when we think about that role, and the discrimination that kind of this Western lens has put on our LGBTQ relatives, it's really cut part of our communal strength. Because all of these specialized roles that they played in our communities, once they became a group of people who was marginalized within the greater context of America, but also, unfortunately, in some tribal communities, we've removed this strength and this resource that existed always in our tribal communities. So in order to be stronger, healthier communities who do thrive into the future, we have to bring all of our relatives back into the fold by appreciating them, loving them, and accepting them. And so just wanted to do a very broad brush stroke on these traditional concepts and encourage everyone that if you are a tribal citizen to really look into what your traditions were surrounding our LGBTQ relatives. What roles did they play? What roles do you play if this is an identity that you have? What role do you play right now, and what role do you want to play in your community? Particularly for our youth, these young people, I've seen each of them, do a variety of things that have uplifted their communities in many ways, and so they are already playing these special roles. And so want to just talk about that briefly. Next slide. So, in modern times, we are seeing, we have Pride Month, right? Which is amazing. I know here at the Oglala Sioux tribe, I helped write the resolution to declare Pride Month, the first time they've ever declared Pride Month. And so it is tribally recognized. We've seen that in tribes all over Indian country, really formalizing it in that governmental space, as well as making sure that we're integrating it in our day-to-day lives and in our communities. So here you see a Dene Pride Walk. We have had a Pride Walk run, color run sachet here. We have had a drag show bingo, things that you wouldn't maybe necessarily always see on the res. This year, in a couple weeks, we'll be doing a kickball, a Pride kickball, where you can dress up in themed clothing and do kickball for prizes and really celebrate in that way. We see here on this slide LGBTQ royalty. And while we know that tribal royalty isn't, necessarily a traditional concept, it is something that is widely practiced across Indian country, and to have these two-spirit representation. This is Miss Two-Spirit Montana, I believe. And then just looking at couples uplifting this love that can be shared across gender lines. And so there's a picture of my wife and I at our wedding here in Porcupine at our home. And then there's another couple, and they dance together. They powwow dance a lot together. And so you just see these visuals that you wouldn't have seen before. And so really exciting as we move forward and open our hearts and our minds to more inclusivity. So next slide. Just wanted to take a quick poll if we could. And really it's just to put it into perspective, but it's a yes or no poll. I have an LGBTQIA2S plus family member or friend. So you'll take a moment to answer that. That would be great. All right. I think we can close the poll now. So as you can see, the vast majority of us have a relative or a friend who identifies as LGBTQ. And I think when we humanize these categories that people are placed in. It really helps us to be better relatives, right? These are our friends and our family, and they are also LGBTQ. And it is a distinct part of who they are and who their spirit is. And so it helps us to be more open and understanding. Next slide. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge that this is a virtual, sacred, safe space. We want to respectfully learn and ask questions. And of course, thank you to our youth panelists for participating, and for you all, if there's any question you don't feel comfortable answering, we honor your right to limit what you share in this group. So just want to make sure that we are all being protective of our youth and respectful of their comfort level. So we will go ahead and jump into the panelist exchange portion here. If you all want to come off of or on camera, that would be amazing. Next slide. Thank you. So I think Misty and Heath have already told us in their introductions that they identify as Two-Spirit. Kennedy, can you share, or do you feel comfortable sharing your identity?
Yeah, I identify as somebody who likes girls. So whatever that means, but somebody who likes girls.
I get it. So you don't necessarily want to put a label on it, but someone who likes girls. I get it. Heath or Misty, did you want to expand at all on your identity? Okay, I'm going to take that as an yes.
I'll go. I thought Misty was gonna go, but um, I am gay. I use whatever pronouns people call me. I'm fine with being called whatever, but I do have a personal preference as he, they. Um, and yeah, just other than that, I'm fine with anybody calling me whatever.
Awesome. I guess we'll go to the next one. And this can be to whoever wants to answer, but what is your experience in sharing your authentic self with your family and community, whether that's coming out or just, any experience that you had, either positive or negative, that was really impactful on you?
I'll share. My experience has been pretty good within the community and also within my family. Obviously, like both of my moms are gay, so it's much easier for me. And so, I came out in like the 7th grade at a Panic at the Disco concert, which is the gayest thing you can do, right? So like, so like it was a lot easier for me. My mom was very accepting. Obviously, she was a little weary because you're a 7th grader being like, I think I like girls. But like it was a lot easier for me. And I think even within the community, I think for girls, it's a lot easier if you say like I'm lesbian or I like girls or something like that. Like you're a lot more accepted by everybody as a whole rather than like boys, I feel like. And I'm sure Heath can touch on that a little more than I can, but like it's been pretty good for me by my family, my inner family, and also my outer family.
So for those of you who don't know on the call, I forget. So I am Kennedy's mother. Um, and it was at a Panic at the Disco concert, and she was very young. And I think as her mother, my initial, of course, 100% accepting, but I was fearful of her being hurt or targeted. That was a very valid fear in my heart. And she's my baby, she's my youngest daughter. And so I had to come to terms with that. I was very fearful, and that's telling in and of itself, right? Like that shouldn't have been my immediate go-to of like, I don't want my baby to get hurt or gay or lesbian bash, that kind of a thing, especially being so young. So I just wanted to share that much as well. That was my initial take when she told me. Um, Anyone else want to share about being your authentic self in community?
I can share upon it. So like for me, my coming out experience wasn't so, I guess, positive in a way, just because my background from my family, we grew up in a Christian background. And so their perspectives about the Naglair Two-Spirit people in our tribe has changed over time just because of colonialism. And so when I came out, I had a lot of, like, my grandma, my mom, they weren't accepting of me over time, but honestly, all I just said was, like, I'm still family at the end of the day. I'm still your daughter, I'm still your granddaughter. So, like, what can you do about it? You can't change somebody's sexuality, but it's up to you if you want to love them or not. So, and that's my experience. Some youth go through it like me, some youth don't. And either way, it definitely builds a pretty strong character of how you should perceive, the ones that love you. And, it really helps you just kind of see who's there for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Misty. Heath, did you want to share it all? And I think particularly Kennedy was kind of alluding to the difference in acceptance or experience between female identifying and male identifying. So, like, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do. With the male identifying, it's very the male identity, like the male community around the reservation. It's very they're not open to the idea of gay men, and I think that that should be more aware. That should be a topic that everyone should be aware of, especially in the male community, because um, with that it comes with lack of respectfulness, and it's very targeting to a point. But other than that, it's a certain group of male boys. Um, but once you find the right group, it's most definitely more comfortable, and everybody's just accepting in that realm. I think it just kind of depends on which group you involve yourself with, and it's just who you surround yourself with, and it's just who's really more comfortable around that. Um, so yeah, that's all I have to share.
Thank you, Heath. And I know Misty touched on, her background, her family background within Christianity and how that impacted her experience. Kennedy, I know that you follow a traditional path. Has there been any, um, or what has been your experience with the acceptance in that realm?
It's been pretty good. I think nobody's like, I think compared to like the Christianity faith, where it's like a lot of people are like, you can't be gay because the Bible says so. In our traditional history, we have had two-spirit people, gay people, right? And so it's like, um, the acceptance has been awesome. I feel, is that what you're asking, right? Okay. I was making sure I wasn't answering a different question. It's been wonderful. Like, I haven't gotten any shame from anybody in my fam. There's like other people within my spiritual circle who also identify as LGBTQ. So it's like it's everybody's accepted. It's not taboo in any way.
Thank you. I just wanted, and of course, that's just your experience within your traditional faith. I'm sure there's this wide spectrum, but wanted to give both of those since Misty kind of shared with us a little bit. And whoever can open this next question as well. But what general feelings does your generation have on sexual and gender identity? Like, does it matter? What do you like? Do you guys talk about it? What is because it's totally different generational than most of us on this call and most of us working with you.
I think that our generation, I think they're very open about the sexual and gender identity, and most of them are more comfortable with it. Mainly because, you know, it's not really serious, and it's everyone really focuses on themselves, and our generation is just kind of based around being comfortable and being you and being yourself and being confident in what you want to do and loving the people that you want to love. So I think our generation is just laid back on the idea. They're really open, they're really supportive. Um, and yeah, that's all I had to share.
I completely agree with Heath. I think like people nowadays want you to be the best version of you, whoever that is, right? I mean, obviously positively, but it's like be you and be what you want to be in every sense of your life, right? So like school, wherever, right? Be you. And so it's like I think there's also the other side of the like on the same side of the coin, it's like some like I think not slang, but like the way some people talk nowadays and being like, that's gay or using the F slur and stuff like that. That's still like very prominent more with like teenage boys. But like as a whole of a generation, we're very, very accepting.
Definitely, and then to add on to Heath and Kennedy's saying this generation is it's obviously a lot more accepting. And I'm actually thankful that it's that way because many of our grandparents, are our parents, they didn't have that option like we did nowadays to be, to be more socially accepted by our family, friends, and so forth. But that just pretty much shows like how well we're excelling as, as human populations as we go through each generation about how we're more inclusive, whether it be about sexuality, your race, ethnicity, different types of intersectionalities. It's becoming more inclusive and accepting.
I love to hear the three of you say that. That makes my heart happy, and it makes me happy for you all that that's an experience that you get to have as you're growing up. So the next question is kind of how do you feel older generations address sexual and gender identity in your community?
I'm just gonna refer back to my answer, like I was saying, like the older generation, like our parents or grandparents, great grandparents, they didn't have that option, and um, generally more so just because of all these implications. Like we can blame it on colonialism, we can like blame it on racism, so forth. All these ideologies that really perpetrate stigma and discrimination towards the LGBTQ plus community. And like today, even so, it's hard for the adults to come out around us. Some of them they are out and about, but there are still some adults who feel like if they come out, they're gonna be discriminated against. And so again, they what I'd really like to see is like a lot of them, the adults that do come out to us younger generations, because I've had an adult come out to me and they kept it in the closet for so many years. And once they came out to me, they told me like I'm really like thankful that your younger generation is becoming more accepting because I couldn't tell this to my parents. And unfortunately they passed away before I could even tell them. And so again, it's really our the generations before us don't have that opportunity to come out or to be accepted. And so yeah, just overall their experience is different from ours, which is why we're kind of seeing, living and learning about how we can do better for the people after us.
I agree with Misty. I think a lot of older people, like back in their day, like I mean older people, it was like illegal to be gay or lesbian like that. So it's like I think it's kind of it's a touchy subject for them, even if they identify as one of those. But also I think with LGBTQ, there's a lot of letters and like pronouns and stuff. I think they tend to get confused. Even I myself get confused. And so I think that confusion, along with how they were growing up and stuff, it sometimes causes like not tension, but like I don't know what the word is, but like it doesn't click for them. Does that make sense?
Just kind of referring back to what Kennedy was talking about, I think that it's definitely a huge adjustment for the older generation to kind of get a ground basis of knowledge of the community. And I think that when I came out, I was trying to be as informative as possible to how I identify and how I want to identify and who I want to be as a person and what my future looks like. And prior to that, I was living with my aunt, so I hadn't had the chance to come out to my father. And when I did, he was very accepting of it, and he was telling me that no matter what I do with my life, it's my choice. What choices are mine, and he's gonna be supportive of that no matter what, and he's gonna follow through with what my decisions are. And he was just being very supportive and reassuring me that it doesn't matter to him as a father, nor to me as a son. So I'm really thankful for that. And it's just that I'm trying to be informative as possible to my father and to my stepmother as well, and to my sisters. They're still confused about many of the topics that tend to discuss with them about, um, and with my father as well. So I think that, just me being as informative as possible with the people around me, trying to give them the knowledge that I have to understand me as a person going forward would better our future together as a family.
I
Thank
think
you,
to add
Heath.
on to Heath as
Oh,
well.
sorry, go ahead.
I think connecting the older generation with the younger generation and having the younger generation educate the older generation will it'll cause all the tension that is caused because of LGBTQ, because of the confusion. I think it'll be able to be cleared up just by this stuff like that, this webinar like this, right? It gives a ground basis of what's going on, and gives the older generation something to reference to.
No, education is key. And like you both said, like sessions like this, that's what we're trying to do. And all of these folks that are on here are trying to learn and understand, to be better relatives, to be more understanding, to be more supportive. And so thank you again for sharing that piece of it and how important it is, the education piece. Before we go to the next slide, I did want to mention, so these photos on this slide are from a Woliton, which is the Lakota word for pride, camp that we put on for LGBTQ youth here on the reservation. And so we had them over to our home, actually is where we had it, but set up a teepee, ask tribal elders to come in and talk to our young people, held different sessions that allowed them to also share kind of like in a talking circle style. Different youth presented on different things. And so it was a really great day. And it was a 1-day camp, but something that hadn't been done here before. And so it was just a really good experience. So it encouraged folks to think about that in your own communities. It wasn't the heaviest of lifts in programming. It was just creating the space really for young people to come together and to know that they're not alone. A lot of times in tribal communities, you may feel very isolated if this is one of your intersectionalities. And so they had a great communal day and really good takeaways. Next slide. So I feel like this one is huge for me as an older person, mid 40s, right? As these young people have alluded to, pronouns are like I there's a spectrum for me, and like I think I understand it up to them, they. When we get to Zer, I'm like lost. So really want to just have you guys, from your perspective, your generation, uh answer kind of those following questions. What are your pronouns? I remember Heath's, but let's go ahead and go back over them. Kennedy, we'll start with you. What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are she, her.
Okay.
Do I answer the rest of the questions or no?
No. Well, you can. That's fine. Yeah. Why do they matter? Yeah. Why do they matter?
I think they're just validating to people's identity. So it's validating them and who they are. And what does it feel like? I've never been misgendered. I feel like I look like a she, her. I act like a she, her. So nobody's ever called me anything else.
Okay. Fair enough. Heath?
Yeah, I think that pronouns are really validating to a person's identity. Um, but to me, I'm fine because I'm really feminine, and I'm fine with being called whatever in a conversation. it doesn't feel like it's misgendering. So it's just, I know that I have my long hair, I have my makeup on, I have cheer. So it's just that I'm really feminine, and it doesn't really bother me to be misgendered because I know who I am as a person, and it's just that I know I made this decision, and it's okay with me. I don't necessarily feel misgendered. Yeah.
Misty?
Hi. So my pronouns are she, her. And the reason why they're she, her is because I'm pretty, I would say a bit masculine, but I like feeling like feminine, like every now and then. And so the reason why it is she, her is again, I want to be more feministic compared to being masculine because of how my physical features are built. One could call me butch, and I really hate that word because again, I'm not trying to be masculine. Okay, I want to be as feminine as possible. So that's why I use those pronouns. Okay, again, it's what Kennedy was saying, it's validation of somebody's identity. And when it comes to being completely misgendered, it's a feeling that it it's horrible because again, you're not getting that validation. Like, this is who I am. I'm trying to tell you who I am. Why aren't you listening? And for some people, like say the transgender community, some of them just don't have the choice to not use pronouns, right? And so again, many of them, they have to elaborate, hey, this is my pronouns. Please use it the way I would like you to use it. This is how I identify. Okay, you do not get to choose how I identify. So again, it's really just being respectful of how one identifies simply because that's how they feel in the inside and that's how they want to be expressed. Okay?
So, and I thank you, Misty. I don't know if anybody, like I said, I get stuck when we get to like Caesar and all of those things. If anybody wants to talk more about this like broad spectrum of pronouns, why you think they exist, what do they mean, like all of the things. Is there anything else you guys can share with us?
I think the rest, after they, them, and everything else that comes after, I think they all fall under the category of being non-binary. And so, people some people take it too far, and, like, some people joke around and people are like, "I identify as an attack helicopter," right? And so, like, some people joke about it, but, like, the rest of them are just, like, as they're all under the scheme of non-binary, just different words. That's what I've known.
Oh, Misty, I didn't know if you were coming off mute. I saw you do that, so I didn't know. And Kennedy cover that.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on, like, there's a lot of genders that have been identified today. The last that I read is that there's been 70 genders identified. But then again, we don't want to combine or mistaken gender versus sexuality. Okay. And so, because again, there's a lot of gender identifications that are coming up today. Even myself, I admit that I do fail to keep up with like what pronouns are being invented or what gender is being identified. And so really it's just making sure that we elaborate our intersectionalities to people and making sure that we understand these identifications.
Thank you. I think we can go to the next slide. So, gender identity. I put the hot topics here because I feel like these are things that we see in mainstream media, but also within our own communities. So I'll kind of leave it open if anyone wants to give just a broad overview of your understanding of gender identity, and then if you want to address any of the hot topics. If not, I'm happy to further facilitate questions, but I kind of wanted to leave this one open for you all.
So when this question or when this topic was brought up at the concept of sports, I did my research because for me as well, as someone who participated in sports but didn't necessarily feel like I fit well like within the women's basketball team versus like the men's basketball team. Again, that's like a very controversial topic. And we know nowadays when it comes to transgender in sports, it's such a hard thing for people to really agree on simply because we have this whole stigma about, um, say, someone with a uterus, how their body is built versus somebody who has a penis, right? And so these physical features, people tend to have that define their capability of being, of how well they can perform in sports, right? And so like we all know like the stigma, like men who have like bulkier uh body, body physical features, say like they're more better like in football versus a woman who's like petite. Okay. And so again, a lot of people, for me, I just definitely feel like when it comes to like transgender people in sports or LGBTQ plus people in sports, it shouldn't be that way. It should just be more so like how people are physically, if they're capable of performing a sport very well. Does that make sense? Regardless of how they identify or how their physical features are. So like for me, um, like I identify as a woman, but if I go into men's sports with how I'm built, I could probably be really good at football. But again, I'm a girly girl, so I'll stay to like basketball or something like that. And really, again, that topic, it's definitely very hard to go around, to really just try and pinpoint what we could all do as a society to accept people of the LGBTQ community that are going into sports. And honestly, my opinion is like if there's a point where we cannot agree about like say transgender people in sports with LGBTQ plus in sports, and then you know we might as well just build spaces for people, the LGBTQ plus, to have or to be in sport teams, develop their own sport teams, so forth, so that again, if we're not unable to agree with this fact that people are going to identify, they are going to be in sports, then we can definitely make something of it and build their own, you know, their own teams and so forth. I don't mean this like in a bad way, but more so like with how everything is going nowadays, we want to make sure that we're protecting the LGBTQ plus community, right? Making sure that we build inclusivity. But if it ever gets to that point, then building their own teams is definitely, it's okay, but also them being on whatever sport team they want to be, that's definitely okay as well. Which I don't tend to necessarily worry about because again, our society is becoming more accepted of people of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, going back to what Misty said, it's definitely a hard topic to talk about, and it's definitely a really argumentative topic to talk about. It's going back to what she also said, it's going down to a person's physical capabilities, and it's also going down to biology, right? There's a lot of discussions around that, and it's really what I see within that whole area is the criticism from politicians, from the higher generations, and the people around us. And I feel like we should find the right answers instead of arguing about it back and forth. There is the choice to make the LGBTQ its own sports, making their own teams, making their own sections of different um, different sections of the LGBTQ community. And I think that we should just try to find answers and how to help the LGBTQ community instead of criticizing them for trying to involve themselves into sports. And that's just kind of my area of knowledge on that. And that's just what I want to express.
I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera, but I think Heath and Misty covered it, really.
Yeah, I wanted to include sports for sure because I do feel like it's a lot of adults and pundits and politicians and policymakers who are talking about you all and your sports participation and who you're competing against, but I don't feel like we get enough of the youth voice of like, do you even care? Like, what do you think? So I appreciate you all sharing as athletes. You're all three of you are athletes. What, what that even means, if anything, to you, and your proposed solutions to this challenge, right? Um, just wondering if you all have any thoughts on gender identity and ceremony, or if you have any experience with that, or you know, parenting as far as how parents could parent better, or the idea of um, you know not the idea of, but like people having issue with like people being trans and being parents and or gay and being parents, like what, anything like that.
I think within ceremony, my own experience, I have a grandma who is trans, and she sundanced as a man, and so it's like I don't know if she were to sundance again, like would she have to go dance with the women? Would she have to do 4 years again? So like it's kind of it's a gray area that I don't know how to like figure out, and I don't know, I would determine it obviously, but like it's interesting, right? So like within ceremony, like if you're transgender, it's like would you go to Nipi with the men or with the women? So it's like it's kind of a I wouldn't say weird, but like a uncomfortable area, I guess, because nobody knows the right answers. And then with parenting, I think if at the end of the day, it just matters if you're being a good parent. Whether you're gay, whether you're a lesbian, whether you're trans, you need to be a good parent towards your kids. That's all that matters, right? And I think that's all other people should care about. If you're parenting your kids the right way, who cares who you are, right? So
Thanks, Ken. And there are people that have the answers to the questions you said ceremonially. And my understanding within our way of life is that yes, your Unchi would sundance with the women. And we have seen, I just had this conversation the other day, some of our relatives who identify as male go into a Nipi or sweat lodge with the men. And so the broad answer is definitely not the authority on that, but wanted to share that.
Covering parenting, I think that parents should be more emotionally available to the LGBTQ community, their kids, and how they identify. I think that's just kind of a misplaced topic, and I think it should be one of the top priorities discussed with the LGBTQ children, basically.
I think that's a great lesson for all parents. So we could all be emotionally available for our children.
Sweet. Thank you, Kennedy and Heath. I really appreciate that. And just to expand more on ceremony, all I can say is decolonize ceremonies, right? Because from my experience, due to colonization, for my tribe, we've had the Negle or Two-Spirit people run their own ceremonies. Okay. So how they would say it is that the Negle people, because they have both masculine and feminine spirits, they're able to run ceremonies for like couples who have trouble in their relationships. Okay, for like heterosexual couples. And so the neglect people, they're able to really just see both sides of the stories. But today, when I go to ceremony, there's really no place for us to participate. There's no place for us to voice our opinions, to really, you know, to really just mitigate ourselves into ceremonies. This can even go as far as you guys were talking about, like dancing, powwows, like even when you're wearing your own regalia. Okay. So one thing that I've learned is that a lot of youth today, sometimes they don't want to wear the regalia. Like for me, the only way I could participate in a ceremony is if I wear my skirt. But I don't want to wear a skirt to a ceremony. Some youth feel that way. Some youth who identify as, two-spirit or transgender, they don't want to wear, the traditional men's clothing, as they would say. They want to wear skirts. what they feel most comfortable in. And so really it's just decolonizing our spaces, because it should only just be me and creator. Okay. No other people should really get into that position to really talk about how you should dress, how you should participate in a ceremony, because this is for your own spirituality. This is for your own participation. This is for your own time to really connect with creator. And so again, why are we telling people what to do, how they should dress, so forth, when really it should just be about, the only thing that matters is connecting with creator, connecting with your spirituality.
Thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. We'll go to the next slide. I think we're getting close to time, and I want to leave enough space for questions and answers. So thinking about how tribes and tribal programs can support, just wanted to note a couple of these things, proclamations, ordinances, legislation. I know both the Oglala Sioux tribe and I believe Navajo Nation, among other tribes, have legalized same-sex marriage, and having these Pride Month proclamations, and things like that. Holding events in your community or for your youth. We've talked about color runs, the day camp, drag shows, parades, whatever you can think of, but also getting youth input. We always have youth interns that help guide the programming, so that we can, in the proclamation of Pride Month was a youth-led effort. I helped draft it, but it was a youth-led effort here on the reservation here for the Oglala Sioux tribe. And so having youth input at every step of the way, and then programming in the form of traditional teachings, webinars, and resource development. And some of those can just be, supportive resources that surround your community on a card that you can hand out or people can pick up. Of course, sexual health resources as well, because we want our young people to be safe and well. And that goes across gender identities and sexual orientation. We want our young people to be well and healthy. And so thinking about all of those different things that we can do as tribes and tribal programs to support. And those are just some top of mind things. Next slide. So what are the support needs that you all can identify from your family, community, and sovereign tribal nations? What do you all need from us to better support you and your peers? You've touched on some of those things, but are there other things that we can be thinking about and working toward that will better support you?
Just kind of recovering on the programs from the previous slide. I think that there should be more awareness programs to try to push out some education on the LGBTQ community, because it is becoming a huge community within the tribe. So I think with pushing out information and education on the community would better the peers and how they see me as a person of the community.
I think also holding like talking circles and like stuff that supports mostly the youth of the LGBTQ. So like how we're doing the kickball and like events like that, fun events that can get people involved, but also educated.
Thank you, Kennedy and Heath. I appreciate that. For me personally, it's strength in numbers when it comes to politics, when it comes to anti-LGBTQ plus laws. Really, what I'm very concerned about is the safety of the LGBTQ plus people, the two-spirit people across the nation, whether or not these laws are going to be, affecting us in such a horrific way to the point where it potentially becomes like a target on our backs, right? And so again, it's really just making sure that you vote for protection laws for the LGBTQ plus Native Two-Spirit people, and really just checking in on each and every one of the people that you know who identifies. Because again, just us identifying as, how we identify simply just puts a target on our back for some people, like especially if you're in like in areas that's anti-LGBTQ plus. So again, it's really just coming together to make sure that we're implying these policies that are safe for the LGBTQ plus community.
Thank you. Are there any programs? I mean, you guys touched on that, but is there any programming or events that you would like to see in your communities, or that you could think other tribal communities would benefit from, or things that have happened in your communities that really resonated with you?
I can talk about Diné Pride. I feel like because of Diné Pride, that foundation has definitely given me comfort into being more comfortable in my skin and with my sexuality, my identification, so forth. I really like what they're doing. And then I live in New Mexico, and so the governor here, she's been very inclusive about the LGBTQ plus community. And so again, it's really like these foundations, these organizations, these nonprofit organizations that are being built, it does help us a lot. Like for me, I'm also part of, we're currently developing a nonprofit organization called the Native Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus Center for Equity. And primarily what our focus is to really just ensure equity to the LGBTQ plus people. And so if I don't know if Kennedy or Heath, if you guys are also in like other nonprofit organizations or so forth, if you know their names, so definitely give them a shout out. But for me, those three organizations are those people. They have really helped me a lot, especially as a Native Dene youth who identifies.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide, which is questions and answers from the group. So if anybody here wants to ask the youth questions and they feel comfortable answering, happy to do that now. You guys did get one shout out here. Not a question, as much as appreciation. Thank you all for sharing a space for greater understanding and response. I teach on these things at a university and cherish people speaking from their experiences. I know that it is hard to do. I want to amplify your efforts and care in this conversation and creation. Much love, honoring, and respect. And Unchiathleen says, I so appreciate all the Takosha's grandchildren. Well, if there are no questions, which is fine, I just want to really say thank you, Wopila Tonka, to the youth for being brave and courageous and sharing who you are for the benefit of yourself and all of your peers. And hopefully this isn't a one and done. This can be a continuing conversation. I know the Tribal Youth Resource Center has also, we've created a resource list for those on the call. And before everyone jumps off, would like to give a couple seconds to the evaluation. I believe it's only 4 questions. Is that right, Antonia? And you guys, I don't know if you guys can read the chat, but lots of people are saying thank you, thank you. Antonia, did you want to put up the eval? And to the youth, I know you're very busy bees this summer, so thank you for your time, and you're free to jump off. Dogsha.